I have a strange relationship with remakes. While I wouldn't say that I'm against them fully across the board, I'm not on board with the sentiment that they should replace the originals. There are some remakes that I like more than most people. There are some that, while I still like, I think are vastly inferior to the original or previous versions. And there are some that I just was really disappointed by. But very rarely has a remake felt on par with the original in such a way that I find it truly difficult to pick which one I like over the other. So anyway, I've been playing Trails in the Sky first chapter. The idea of remakes for the Trails in the Sky games has been going around for a good bit of time, especially following discussions about Falcom's desire to bring the trilogy to modern systems, as before this remake, all three games were stuck on PC. FC and SC did have PSP versions, but, I mean, come on. Who wants to play the games with Zane instead of Zin? Now, full disclosure, during these discussions, I had held the stance that I didn't think that the Sky games necessarily needed remakes, as I think they've aged really well. I was in the hoping for ports camp. Have my thoughts changed after playing Sky First Chapter? Not really. I still think that the original trilogy has aged very well, and hey, I'd still love to see ports of the originals alongside the remakes because I have become the embodiment of greed. And why don't we bring over those Cold Steel 1 and 2 Switch ports to the West while we're at it? Because if the other two Sky games get remade, then there'd just be a big Cold Steel 1 and 2 shaped hole in the Switch library for the West, but I digress. Now, while I don't think the Sky games need the remakes, after playing Sky First Chapter, I need the remakes. I know SC is pretty much confirmed to be getting one, but if I don't see a Sky the Third remake as well, I will be rioting. Anyway, as you can probably tell by the title of the video and by how I've been talking about it so far, yeah, I played Trails in the Sky First Chapter recently, and yeah, it was phenomenal. So with today's video, I wanted to talk about the game. What it did well, what it did really well, and what it did that made it stumble a bit in a few areas. No spoilers ahead, let's get right into it. Trails in the Sky First Chapter is the greatest remake I have ever played. Falcom took so much care to balance the game being a one-to-one remake, while also adding in some newer systems and quality of life features. The two biggest changes that are immediately noticeable are the game being in full 3D and the new battle system. Sky 1C, which is what I'm going to call it from now on, to differentiate it from Sky FC, uses Falcom's in-house engine, the same one they've been using for games like Trails to Daybreak 1 and 2, Trails Beyond the Horizon, East 10, and some cutscenes in Trails into Reverie. And honestly, this game is hands down the best looking game in this engine. Don't get me wrong, I love how those other games look, and I think they fit their respective games tremendously well, especially the Calvert vibes with Daybreak and Horizon. However, the use of colors and shading in the Sky remakes just really makes the game pop. It reminds me a lot of the art style seen in other JRPGs like Visions of Mana and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink that really make their worlds stand out with their use of color and lighting, almost a painting-like aesthetic. However, Sky 1C also manages to add its own stuff in it to really fit that Trails in the Sky vibe. The game looks really pretty. The only thing that looked a bit off to me in the game was some of the water in certain areas, but it was really only noticeable a few times, and even then, it never took me out of the game. This change to full 3D also allows for a way to experience Liberl like never before. The game does a great job of hiding certain landmarks from the player so as to both make the regions feel bigger, as well as not having to render too much on screen at once. However, there are still a lot of places you can see from other locations, like how you can see a bit of Gransel Castle from Gurun Gate, or how you can see the tetracyclic towers way before reaching them, and how the rooftop of each tower gives you an incredible view of almost everything in the respective regions. And this is also due to another new addition to this game, not seen in any other Trails game so far, which is that pretty much every external location in a given region is a part of the same zone, with no loading screens in between. This allows for a much more connected feel to the region. The trade-off is that, unlike in the Daybreak games, every building interior has its own zone. However, this is likely due to the game being so one-to-one that the exteriors and interiors of the buildings have different scales, just like in the original game. All in all, this move to 3D is something that I didn't know that I really needed. It was great to see Liberl presented in this way. From walking along the highways to exploring the streets of the various cities, this game manages to make Liberl feel fresh while also keeping with that Sky Trilogy vibe. And on the topic of vibes, playing this remake reinforced this idea I have about the series. It's the idea that, while I think all Trails games share a lot of the same DNA, the first half of the series, from Sky FC to Reverie, had a different vibe to the current direction of the series. Not saying that one is inherently better than the other, just that they're different. I would even say that Cold Steel 2 is the last game to really lean in heavily on this vibe. I can best describe the vibe in question as something like comfy nostalgic. I was starting to think that I might just be full of it with this idea, but when I was playing this remake, and while I was walking around Rouen, I took some time to just stand on the bridge and look upriver at Lake Valeria. And I was really feeling this vibe, so maybe I'm onto something. Regardless, I love the new style of these remakes. While the chibi style has its own charm and it will always hold a special place in my heart, the art style of this game just fits in so well. The other big change is the new combat system. Sky 1C uses the new hybrid system from the Daybreak games, and also Horizon, but I haven't played that one yet. I was a bit wary of this change at first, as I've already voiced a lot of my frustrations with this new system in the past. While I do think it has a lot of good ideas, I also think that it needed some more iterations and changes made to it in order for it to be as good as what the series combat used to be. And while I still have some issues with the form of this combat present in this remake, I think it's far and away the best iteration of this hybrid style that I have played, barring Horizon, because I have yet to play that game. At first, I thought the combat wasn't as good as Daybreak 2's, but as I started to unlock more things as the game went on, the combat became better and better in my opinion. There are 3 changes to this system that I think really propel it above its previous iterations. First is the return to S-crafts using all of your CP. I have been consistent on not liking how Daybreak has handled S-crafts, and I think Sky 1C's return to the old style, in addition to another of the 3 changes I mentioned, works so well together and makes the combat a lot more fun and thoughtful in my opinion. The other change in this case is the change to turn bonuses. Daybreak 1 made the controversial change to lock the ability to steal turn bonuses behind a shard skill, which was something I expressed my dislike for. Daybreak 2 pulled back on this change, and it was for the better in my opinion. Sky 1C, however, goes back to the Daybreak 1 style with a pretty big difference. Instead of the steal turn bonus ability being a skill, it's more like an additional effect on certain crafts. All damaging S-crafts have this ability, so the game retains the importance on S-breaks, but some other normal crafts also have it, which opens up a lot of strategy options. Stunning enemies also steals their bonuses, which adds even more variables for strategy. It made it so that I had to think about my turn order a bit more than just delaying the enemy or trying to get the smaller delay value on a character to steal a crit. The third change is the addition of Overdrive. Now this version of Overdrive is very different from the version present in Cold Steel 2. Overdrive in this game is more similar to the boost system in the Daybreak games, but I think it's much better here. I have been very vocal about the boost system being my biggest gripe with the newer combat, and I think Overdrive fixes almost all of my issues with it. For one thing, it is not required for S-crafts, which was one of my biggest problems with the boost system. It's also character specific, so the whole party isn't sharing the same pool of resources to activate it, which is nice. The character specific buffs offered also feel more like nice bonuses rather than an almost integral part of your character's full build, like the boost system did. My only issue with this new system is that it's hard to tell how far away you are from being able to use Overdrive. It just kinda happens. And that does lead into another small issue that I have with this game, which is that the UI and especially the button mapping is a little whack. Nothing that ever really took me out, but I still did have some problems with it, especially in regards to the attack button being mapped to circle by default and not being able to change it in the turn-based systems, but being able to change it in the action systems, as well as square still being the button you use to press to activate turn-based combat from action combat, but it not being the button to press to go back to action combat from turn-based combat, which threw me off a lot. But again, it's nothing major. Beyond the turn-based side of things, the action side is not as good as Daybreak 2's in my opinion, due to lacking certain things like quick arts and the character switching mechanic. However, Sky First Chapter does have a lot of newer additions that do make up for these mechanics being absent for the most part. Mainly Estelle and Joshua's new combo move. The only real problem is that you unlock that move mad late into the game, so most of the game feels like a reduction to doing the same 3 things from the Daybreak 1 style combat, even if the action side of things feels much more fluid here. I do, however, think that the advantage system took a huge blow in Sky 1C, as I felt like it wasn't really a factor for me. The Trails series has been continuously nerfing advantages since Cold Steel 1, and it's the worst it's ever been in this game in my opinion. Here, only your lead character gets advantage, granted on an auto-crit turn, but then the targeted enemy gets a free turn to unstun, and then the battle plays out as normal. It's just kinda lame in my opinion. I wish it was at least like Daybreak 2, where every party member gets a turn, but it's not game-breaking. The trade-off is that this game has the follow-up attack system from the Cold Steel games, which can allow you to just wipe encounters with a burst or chain, especially after the point in the game where you unlock the ability to use burst without a full party. Speaking of that system, I loved it in Cold Steel, and I love it here. It's cool to see it back. The customization in this game is pretty much the same as the original, with a few different courts added in. I've gone on record to say that I very much prefer the Orbment system in the Cold Steel games, which I know is an unpopular opinion, but I prefer it due to the freedom and variety offered, as well as I feel like I had to think a bit more about builds for those games. But I still do really like the elemental value system. With that said, my playthrough of this game did reinforce the idea for me that I just think the Crossbell games handled this style the best out of the 5, now 6, that have used it. I felt like you had more options with the Crossbell games than here. I also think this game in particular is just way too easy on normal mode, to the detriment of the customization. I rarely had to change things around in my own playthrough, and that's from not even really trying to min-max a build. All in all, the combat in this game is incredible. I for sure have some issues with it that I hope that the SC remake iterates on, but it's still a lot of fun, and the best version of this hybrid system in my opinion. One more gameplay change that I really like in Sky 1C is how the reward system is handled. The reward system is an iteration of the mini-missions from Reverie. By doing certain things in the game, you get some rewards, which could be anything from armor to accessories to quartz. The problem with this system in the Daybreak games is that it locked pretty much all of the unique and endgame stuff behind it. This in turn made treasure chests feel just really lame in my opinion. Treasure chests have been getting nerfed in a way since Cold Steel 1, with that game being the first to not have any weapons in chests. However, the Cold Steel games and Reverie made up for it with the metric crap ton of unique and powerful quartz, as well as master quartz, which could all be found in chests. In that way, chests still felt rewarding. Getting something like Domination in a chest felt exciting. With the Daybreak games though, there are no unique rewards in any chest throughout the game. No more armor or unique quartz, only mid-level accessories you can easily buy in shops. It's pretty much all healing items, the verse quartz, those mid-level accessories I mentioned, and Sepith, which are the most exciting rewards in those games in my opinion, just cause it means you can open up some more slots for characters. It's a complaint I've had with the Daybreak games that I've never really voiced on this channel. In Sky 1C though, weapons, armor, high-level accessories, and quartz are all back in the chests. The reward system mainly offers duplicate quartz or special accessories and armor. I love this change, as it allows for chests to feel exciting again, rather than just something to open up so you can get an actual good item from hitting milestones. Alright, enough about the gameplay, let's talk briefly about the story. And yeah, it's just Sky FC, so it's great. I was honestly a little concerned that Falcom was going to add in a lot of references to future games, or allude to things that we learned in later games that weren't fully set up at the time of FC's development, due to those reveals not being thought of until later. But to my surprise, there was very little added to the story. The only new content are some minor side quests that flesh out some of the other Bracer team members, except for Karna for some reason, and one about Tita and her parents. Nothing spoilery at all, just some nice quests that give a little more to their characters. There's also a few CGs that reference some things, but there's only really one that had anything significant, and even then, it was just some characters who new players will meet in later games. It felt more like a these people make sense being here kind of change, rather than one that's setting up something for the future. Honestly, I think playing through this remake gave me a greater appreciation for Sky FC's story, because I haven't played the original in a very long time. I love seeing just how much of the series' identity and themes are present even in this game. And while I wouldn't say this playthrough has moved FC in my overall ranking of the series, it did allow me to fall in love with Sky FC's story all over again. My biggest problem with the story, however, is the script. Now, this has been talked about by pretty much everyone, but yeah, the script is just not as good as the original XC translation in my opinion. It lacks a lot of the same charm and is way drier as a result. There are also some just incorrect lines that really took me out because I had to reconstruct the sentence to figure out what the line should be. One that I still remember is near the end of chapter 1 when certain characters are trying to make their escape. Joshua says something along the lines of, "They're taking off in an airship," when the line should be something more like, "They're heading for the airship." The reason for this is because 1, they aren't currently taking off in an airship, they are 3 full stories from the dang airship, and you just saw them heading for the stairs, and 2, the definite article works better in this context than an indefinite article. There are a few lines like that while they aren't senseless, they're just a bit awkward and don't flow as well in context. However, I did notice that this problem seemed almost non-existent towards the later parts of the game. The even bigger problem, however, is the inconsistency with translation and pronunciation. There are some different names and terminology that are inconsistent with the rest of the series. Some of these changes are from Falcom directly, like the names of the tetracyclic towers being changed from Esmalus, Ambril, Saffril, and Carnelia to Jade, Amber, Azure, and Crimson respectively. And some changes have been corrected by Gung Ho, like Armand and Ellie's names getting corrected, and the title of Sword Saint being changed back to Divine Blade for consistency. However, there is still one big one that hasn't been fixed, and probably won't be for this remake due to it being present in voice lines. That is the change from archaisms to golems. This one is a bit of a problem because there are also golems already in the series and they are different from archaisms. However, as long as Gung Ho corrects it for the Sky SC remake, assuming they will be handling it, which they probably will be, this change can just be hand-waved as the characters not knowing the technical term. There were also some internal consistencies, like Selg being translated as Selg for the most part, but being called Serg in a few places. One even managed to slip into a voice line, which I thought was pretty funny. But like I said, this isn't a game breaker for me. It would be nice to have more consistency with the rest of the series, but it never completely took me out. The same, however, cannot be said of the pronunciations. Now, the English voice acting in this game is really well done. I love how Gung Ho managed to get back pretty much all of the original actors, and in the cases where they didn't, they got back the actors who have taken over the roles in the more recent games. And the voice actors absolutely killed it in their roles, especially for the main cast. I was, however, also really surprised by the actors for Dorothy and Amalthea, who did phenomenal jobs in their roles. Now, I'm saying all of this to say that I don't blame the voice actors for the pronunciation problems, as these specifically seem to be more of a direction thing. The game manages to nail pronunciations for the most part, except Ravenu in one line for some reason, but it really falls apart in the endgame. Nothing, though, compares to liberal being pronounced as liberal. Every time a character called it liberal, a piece of me died on the inside, and they said it a lot. This is honestly the biggest thing I hope they fix for the Sky SC remake, especially for newer players who are going to get hit with some inconsistencies when they get to later games. Now, I know this is a very much a glass houses kind of thing from someone like me who is, I wouldn't say known for my impeccable pronunciation of words, but this is more of a do as I say, not as I say kind of thing. All in all, though, I think Gung Ho did a great job with this game, and even if I think the script is way drier than the original, it still manages to nail the overall charm of Trails in the Sky. Lastly, I want to mention the music. Now, I usually don't like the soundtracks in remakes more than the original soundtracks, but this one was really good. I don't think there are many tracks that I thought were just outright better than the original, but They managed to capture the same feeling as the original to the point where I can see myself happily listening to both soundtracks. There's only really one song that I don't like as much as the original to a somewhat significant degree, which is the opening theme. But that's mainly just because I think it lacks the same punch in the finale of the song. Even then, I still think it adds some new stuff like the piano when Olivier is playing in the visuals that I really like. There are also some great new renditions for songs like Hololight of the Sealed Land and Ancient Minx. The soundtrack is great, and I love that you can select between it, the original, and the EVO versions seamlessly, even if I'm never willingly reaching for the EVO option. I hope Falcom keeps up this energy for the Sky SC and Sky the Third remakes, because Unleashed Greatest Treasure, The Merciless Savior, and Overdosing Heavenly Bliss need to move mountains. Wrapping up here, Sky First Chapter is now the gold standard for how to do a remake, in my opinion. It adds to the game in ways that don't take away from the original's vibe and charm, while also knowing when not to overstep. It respects the original by staying one-to-one, but also adds more modern system and mechanics from later games in a seamless way. Now, do I like it more than the original? I think they're both neck and neck. I like a lot of the quality of life and combat changes in the remake, but I think the script is vastly superior in the original. I guess I would say I like the remake slightly more, just because if you put both in front of me, I would probably choose to play it slightly more often than the original, but it's really close. With all of that said, Trails in the Sky First Chapter is the best remake I have ever played, and I am so glad to see it bring many more new players to this incredible series. I cannot wait to see the Sky SC and Sky the Third remakes in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I love making Trails content, so it's great to get back into it. And I do have a few more Trails videos planned for the future. Anyway, please let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Sky FC remake if you've played it for yourself. And yeah, let me know if you'd also love to see a Sky SC and Sky the Third remake. Throw that out of the way. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. Thank you once again for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week.